Hey everybody, welcome back. We are doing a podcast, IRX and the Indie Game Riot. What did you say? You're using that as a noun?
Yeah,
Or as something that happened?
or something that is currently happening.
And the riot of indie games. Yeah, I see what you're going for.
Yeah.
I gotcha.
One last time, in case you didn't know, if you're expecting Bob, unfortunately Bob had a tragedy in his family and could not make it today. So we are replacing that with the thing that, by audience vote, talking about the Indie Game Riot, IRX, and how we do the podcast and the show and all that sort of stuff. So this is going to be a bit of a wing it situation.
A little bit.
So
short
and please, if you have questions,
ask them
in the chat because it will continue this more smoothly. So where should we start, you think?
Let's start where it all started.
Yeah, I was going to say the beginning.
Which
is
funny because in the beginning, Josh and I met each other on the voice acting club.
Well, you're talking about like way in the beginning.
Hey, that is where this starts, because I think that there are a lot of really important aspects of the pre-Indie Game Riot, the prehistoric days that really lead up. Yeah. So Josh and I met each other on Voice Acting Club back in 2008, which sounds like not very
2007,
long.
I think it was
2007. You're right.
Yeah.
2007, which sounds a little bit further away, and then you consider that it's been almost 10 years.
Yep.
That's a lot of time. And Josh had this idea for doing a voice acting based podcast, and he held auditions, and one of the people that he picked was me, which is really cool because I was kind of a nobody. and then it was Josh, a guy, Calciman. I don't remember his first name. Do you remember his first name?
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. His username was like Calciman or something. Calciman.
Yeah. And
look,
and
I kind of feel douchey,
like,
or something like that. I don't know. But
yeah, it lasted maybe like 20 something episodes.
30. I think it was in the 30s.
30s, something like that.
It was like 34 or something.
Which is pretty good. We can't really complain about that. We were younger, and I was dumber, and
Well, you were still in school, and
I was still in high school. Yeah.
And I was just starting on the stuff myself, and that was the very first podcast I had ever done, and
that is the first.
We did it in the most inefficient way possible. Granted, I don't think there were the same amount of tools that we had.
We didn't have the resources.
Yeah, but I mean, it was there were some nightmares, and we lost like a few good episodes just because of
Gene Goldstein.
Goldstein was a guy that Tech
interview.
looked up to as a voice actor,
and
good animation and stuff like that. And unfortunately,
we lost that interview.
We lost it because we it sounded like really unprofessional when I say it, but we required that our guests be able to record themselves during the show, so we could all sync it up together.
Because back in the day, there wasn't a way to like record Skype and all that stuff.
Not easily or cheaply.
Without not easily or cheaply, and Open Broadcaster didn't exist, and there weren't that many resources. But we made do using Audacity and prayers. So and then Josh did a bunch of other podcasts after. Voice acting radio.
I did other one called Uncivilized Behavior. It was basically a comedy podcast. It was a kind of raunchy side. It was really a lot of fun. Tried bringing VA Radio back, I think, for a little bit. Didn't really catch on. So, and then there was a large break as far as podcasts go. I was working on voice acting professionally. You were going to school for college and stuff like that. Yeah, and Garrett's saying OBS changed streaming shows. It really, having something free and something that's powerful enough to stream. Obviously, I mean, this wouldn't happen.
We use it. Yeah.
Well, it might. We might be using XSplit, but OBS is a lot more simple. Maybe less feature rich, although there's plugins. But it's a lot more simple than XSplit, and you have to pay for XSplit, or at least
monthly.
The good stuff.
It's a subscription service.
Yeah.
Which is even worse.
So, but yeah, there was a big gap in as far as podcasts go, and then a little over 2 years ago, I was
feeling the itch.
I had my second kid, and I couldn't do. I was working on Let's Plays before.
No, you did it.
You had your first kid.
Your second kid was born after the show started.
I know, but well. Oh yeah, you're right. So I was okay. So this is where I was going with it, though. I had a kid, and I was working on Let's Plays and stuff like that, and then I decided to start the show because I wanted to do the podcasting, and I had grown to really love and appreciate what indie games are doing for the gaming industry. So I was like, oh man, this is perfect. I want to do. There's not really any good indie game podcasts out there that I can think of. A lot of them were more on the technical side. You know, there's a lot of good game dev podcasts, but not much that. Really, fucker? Jesus. Not a lot of good podcasts that were really like there to support and show off,
facilitate,
indie games,
the great games that might not have been getting the attention that we felt they deserved.
Right. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna fill that gap because I want to give back to the indie game industry and the community that has provided me with so many fantastic games, and a lot of times they're cheaper. And for someone who didn't have a lot of money or doesn't have a lot of money, I was like, man, this is so awesome for me to be able to play all these games. And I want to give back and support. So I reached out to, I was on the Let's Play Reddit at the time, or subreddit, and Rev, who is a mod there, saw my post. And he was like, hey man, I'm kind of interested in doing this. You want to like talk over Skype? And we sat down for, I don't know, a few hours.
It was a good 4 or 5 hours that first time.
We
weren't even sure it was going to happen yet, but we're making out plans and coming out with name and our tags and all of that sort of stuff.
I wonder if I still have the text document that you guys sent me with all of like the name ideas and the tagline ideas.
I do.
Somewhere around there.
Yeah, I have it in a text document. But Rev reached out to me. We sat down and brainstormed, and we had all kinds of. Do you want to name some of the other?
So some of the other names that they thought of, the Indie Supporter, Indie Cast, Under the Radar, Diamond in the Rough, The Glitch. Some of our taglines that somebody really liked, creating an uproar, causing a commotion, and then we finally settled on enabling the evolution.
Yes.
I'm so embarrassed. Those are like...
and we what's really cool too is that one thing that Josh and I worked on. Well, one of the things that we focused on in when we did VA Radio was that we broke everything down into segments where we talk about different things. And it would be very structured. And that's one of those things that I don't think a lot of podcasts actually do. Like, I thought that was a really normal thing. It's like, yeah, you structure the show, you have talking points, and then you go off from there. So you know what you're going to be talking about. You don't exactly. And the more and more you realize it, the more a lot of podcasts are just sort of like, we have a topic for today. Let's talk about it for an hour.
Waxing
and we could totally do that. But the structure is something that I feel we found that a lot of people really do appreciate. And
not a whole lot of podcasts really do it that way. There's some big ones, but most of them are really freeform and just kind of go, which is fine. But I really appreciate the structure, and it kind of gives a something to look forward to as you're listening to the show, or maybe you can skip ahead if you're just not interested in something. And yeah, we put all this together, and Tech came in a little bit later because I was looking for. I always really like the 3-person tandem, just the chemistry. More than 3 gets crowded.
Psychologically, you have to have at least 3. They've done a bunch of studies on that, and in order to have some form of conflict, you have to have at least 3 people, because then you get really spirited debates that way.
Yeah, and which is great.
3 ways are the best ways.
So I was looking for a 3rd person, and I was like, well, who am I going to find? And because it's been a little while. I mean, I've been in contact with Tech, but not consistently.
Your friends on Facebook.
Yeah, things like that. And I was like, wait a minute. I thought back to like the other podcast I did. It was like all the hosts I had on the other podcast were really good hosts. And I was like, Tech.
Yeah.
Tech.
And
Go ahead. No, you had something to say. Go ahead.
So when you sent me a message about that, I was I remember VA Radio, and maybe like once or twice a year since VA Radio stopped, I was like, man, I really loved doing VA Radio. Like that was a really like great thing to do, and we were really onto something, and it really sucks that it didn't like go through. And I was having one of those thoughts, and then within that week, probably within like a few days, Josh is like, hey, and I'm like, oh shit. And he's like, thinking about doing a podcast. And immediately my brain is just like, I don't care what it is. Yes. 100% yes. And he's like, do you play indie games? And like, I have played indie games. And the rest is has been recorded for everybody to see.
Yeah, we really started off. I mean, probably one of the most important things for a podcast is chemistry.
Yeah.
And to be honest, for the first episode, I still think it wasn't bad chemistry-wise. We had a good flow.
It really wasn't.
But you can definitely tell the difference between then and now.
Well, you also have to consider, too, that, like, Josh, you and I, we'd known each other for years, you know, acquaintance-wise, you know, like, we hadn't really talked or anything. And then I hadn't met, I think I'd met Rev, like, once in a Skype call, like, a week before we started. And that week before we started, I was just like, man, I just want to do it right now. Man, I just want to do it, like, tomorrow. Why can't we just do it right now and just do it and just start? Because I was just, like, itching for it.
Yeah.
And actually one of the best things that I think we did was we waited and we really got the formula down before we started.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that really helped us out, not getting too caught up in the, hey, let's do this thing. And we stepped back and we were like, let's do this thing the right way. And from there, we this show has brought people across the country and brought people together. We've met so many amazing people. It's kind of weird.
Let's talk about that for just a second. Yeah. I mean, from our get-go, I mean, we knew that this was going to be a long-term project. It was going to be a difficult project because we don't have investors that are pouring money into us. It is literally what you see is what we are. It's three guys that enjoy games and want to share that passion with everybody else. And so we're just like, how can we do this? And our original format, I have to say, I do much prefer our current format where for our feds out there, we live stream our recording session, and that becomes part of it. I will say I missed kind of the audio only days. I'm a little bit. I'm less a fan of having to always wear pants.
I'm less a fan of always having to wear shirts. I remember in the teens and the 20s before I think we started doing cameras in like the 30s or something, right?
Yeah, something like that.
So I remember
it was like 1930s.
In like the episodes in like the 10s and the 20s, it was summer because I think we started in May, right? Did we start in March or May?
May, like that.
No, May. March. Yeah, right. Because our anniversary is May 5th.
Yep. So we started in May, and then it just got hotter and hotter and hotter from there. So it was great to be able to later at night, turn off all the lights, put a fan on you, just strip down to however you feel comfortable, and just be like, yeah, it's really hot, but I'm getting there. And now it's, yeah, I'm really hot. And now you see that, and I still have to wear a shirt.
Right. So yeah, no, it's grown from there. We did a lot of legwork in the beginning, reaching out to various devs and publishers, just to try and get some kind of recognition. And it helped that we are all involved with the YouTube community in some way, and it also really helped that. What was it, like 3 weeks in, something like a month in, Indie 3 took off, and
Indie 3 really did help push some people towards us and gave us a lot of connections.
And it also gave us a little bit of legitimacy, because before Indie 3, like we not many people really knew about it, and then once Indie 3 happened, we were able to network, and
we also did a live podcast on Indie 3.
Yeah.
Right, and so that really formed the genesis for IRX, and that was where I was going to segue for that, was because it was, for those of you that weren't around or don't remember, about a week before E3 took off, a couple of guys up in Washington, Solon, and my mind is blanked on me at the moment. We're sitting there and was like, why don't we have an E3 for indie games? You know, we have Indiecade, and we've got other festivals, we've got MagFest and so on, and then it was like, we're gonna throw this together, and they ended up showcasing like 5,000 games, and they ended up having to like stream it across 3 different channels to fit all the panels in and everything like that, and there was a lot of shit show drama that happened,
and what's really fun is that I didn't see any of that because I was in Ohio playing tabletop games.
Right. So it was a lot of fun, and it was one of the biggest, quickest showcases of drama in the indie scene that I've seen in the last few years. But that
was Gamersgate before Gamersgate.
Yeah, a little bit.
And then the next year, they decided they weren't going to do it, in large part because of the issues the previous year.
For anybody keeping up, that's last year.
That's last year, and we decided, because we found out about it in June that they weren't going to do it, and we decided, fuck it, we'll do it, because why not? This is right up our alley. Yeah. So, in a month, it went from, hey, this is a good idea, to,
hey, IRX 2015.
IRX 2015. Can we reclaim that hashtag on Twitter? And like it was a fantastic experience. We've what did we have? We had something like 60, 70 games to show, and we had like 20 some odd panels.
It was like 17 actually, but
was it? Okay. Yeah. And then it was just this huge thing, and it was a lot of work, and it was really rushed, but it was a great experience,
and everybody had a lot of fun,
and we learned a lot.
Everybody had a lot of fun.
We did learn a lot.
Somebody got a job through it. I recall them. Yeah,
I don't remember this.
We got
it was an artist that was like, oh yeah, no, this is some of my stuff during one of the art panels, and somebody else was looking for an artist. They connected, and
that's
we're
awesome.
going to see their work in a game.
And then also Tim Donnelly and oh god,
what are you saying?
What's the name? Undercog.
Oh, I think that fell through. Like they
talked never. About it. It's talking about it. That's the important thing. Like people were networking, and the point of the event, which was to bring people together for this great, fun, long weekend of indie games and professionals talking, and like that was the end goal. It didn't have to be like, oh yeah, this super hyper produced like E3 convention where it's super clean and everything's like absolutely perfect.
Probably the biggest like positive feedback, like the most stated positive feedback that was given to us was how laid back this is.
Yeah.
We host it in a laid back style. It's we're open. We don't really censor ourselves, to be honest, and we're here having fun. We're not worried about getting paid like a lot of like physical conventions where everything's like so uptight. Not to say physical conventions are bad. I love a lot of those conventions, but it's just a different feel, and people are here just to network, and they're not stressed out about having to impress everyone.
And like that's one of those crazy things too that I think we really learned by going to some of the other conventions like MagFest and Too Many Games, where you don't really when you sort of like look at developers of games, and you, let's say you like really love a game that they made, and you look up to these people, and it's like they've made something so great, they've had such an effect on so many people, but the concept of them just being normal people sort of doesn't come through until you meet these guys and you talk to them and you see
have
what they're working on
at the arcade.
Yeah, exactly. and you really like connect on a human level, and like it's one of those cool things where it's like we are all just people going through life and being able to connect with interests and just be people around everybody else is something that's very valuable.
It happened last year, obviously, like Rev said, but this year I've noticed even more that a lot of you are just really supportive of each other, and that's like, we want to support you and show you off and give you exposure, but to see people saying, hey man, I'll help you with that Steam Greenlight, or hey, I'll give you some tips, and you know, I see it in the chat, and it fills me with psychotic joy to see that in the chat, and the chat embodying the indie spirit of supporting one another.
And you know, we keep mentioning the we keep talking about the devs involved as though they're our primary audience, and while developers are a significant chunk of our audience, we do also, you know, appreciate those that aren't developing but just come to hang out and check out cool games.
Also not developers but also industry professionals, you know, whether it be PR or musicians or, you know, things like that don't.
And that's one of those crazy things too, because when we started out on this journey of Indie Game Riot and then later Indie Revolution Expo, we didn't necessarily intend for the audience of the podcast to be developers. We knew that obviously developers would listen, but we weren't thinking about that demographic, or I wasn't thinking about that demographic when we, you know, launched the show.
We were thinking about the fans of
exactly. We were thinking about the fans. And
now it's kind of switched. We know I'm willing to bet that our numbers are.
When you kind of look at it, the devs are also fans.
Exactly.
Sometimes more so because because they see all the other games and they're supportive of all that. So, you know, being able to show it off to all kinds of people is awesome, because not only is it giving exposure to games so people will buy it and therefore support the devs, but also the networking opportunities. You know, I'll keep harping on that. I think another thing that people were mentioning they wanted to know about is like not just I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but not just the process, but maybe the technical side of things.
Oh yeah, I could go on for hours.
Yeah.
So our technical process is a hodgepodge of fuckery.
That's true. And also it goes to show that because like I have a mic that I spent too much money on. I mean, I didn't spend too much money on this specific mic, but this is like a $230 microphone, and it probably doesn't come through because of the stream quality. But you know, like I've always loved audio, and I have this really convoluted setup. But then Josh has a he's got an AT 2020. Yeah, he's got an AT 2020, which is, you know, an absolutely solid microphone, going down in price a little bit. And then Rev's got I have
a Logitech headset. This one, by the way, lasted a year. I had to buy this last year on Saturday for IRX.
Yeah.
Because my other headset died.
I remember that.
It cut out right at the tail end of something, and it was like, oh crap, this sucks. Fortunately, we had a panel coming up next, so I'm like sitting here, I'm like, okay, Fry's opens in 10 minutes. I can be there in 15. I can... So yeah, it's a lot of this is spit and dreams and twine holding it all together.
You don't need a whole lot of money to actually make a podcast,
or a show at all. Like this whole thing is being done on. We know we're streaming it on here on Hitbox. Josh is recording it so that we can upload it to YouTube, and everything that we're doing happens in Skype.
Right.
Yeah.
Now. And I mean, we ask for like you know, people to consider doing like Patreon and stuff like that, or donating directly, all that, or supporting through merchandise, all that sort of stuff. But that you don't need that money. The reason that we're asking for that is to improve the quality. But to get started,
because there are some things that just cost money.
Right.
Website hosting, or the Riot of the Year award.
Maybe more like more professional broadcasting software, or maybe even paying someone to do it at some point. Things like that, or maybe even like fancy, I don't know, backdrops or green screen stuff.
We have that. Yeah, I mean we have contracted out some art for the show.
The logo we paid someone to make. Yeah.
And it's all relatively minor stuff. So I mean, anybody that looks at podcasting or doing a streaming show and goes, "Oh well, I don't have the most glorious setup,"
you don't need one.
It really doesn't matter. We're three guys calling
content.
each other over Skype.
Yeah,
and content is king. Yes, quality helps. If you have really bad quality, it's not going to go well.
Probably the biggest improvement that we can make, and also the most expensive, would be to actually have a place to go to, like a little studio type of thing to go to. And of course, that's a goal.
Out there to your frozen wasteland. It's not going to happen.
And of course, that's a goal, but you don't need it to just do it.
Yeah.
So.
Exactly.
We've got still like 15
minutes, right?
If you want to know how convoluted this can get, just because we are on the topic of hardware, so Josh probably has the most intuitive normal setup, where he's got his microphone going into an audio interface that plugs in via USB to his computer, and that's the easiest, probably least expensive for very high quality audio option that you can go for. Rev, obviously, headset microphone. There's nothing wrong with headset microphones. You'll hear all these people on YouTube being like, the microphones on headsets suck, but they're fine. They really
when you're talking about like the compression through Skype and OBS and all that sort of stuff, it really doesn't make a huge difference because it compresses the hell out of audio anyway.
Yeah. Right. But actually, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, but the reason that I have this microphone rather than just something like Rev has is because I do voiceovers professionally, so I need to have this crisp sound. Tech does it from time to time. And
I was really into music when VA Radio started, so I started out with an MXL 990.
With that said, though,
yeah,
with that I had the same microphone when I started out MXL. With that said, though, Rev mentioning quality, if it's bad quality, there you can still do bad quality, because I've heard podcasts where it's like it's like a fucking drive-through, So, you still need to have, but that really has to do with probably either busted equipment or just not knowing how to operate in general.
Right.
Because that's really just takes some audio manipulation,
some finagling in your settings, and like Skype's not the most advanced audio tool, but I'm functional. You guys can hear me. I think I sound like crap, but that's because I hate the sound of my voice. So
I will say that doing this podcast and I feel like I'm really lucky because I have a way that I can directly monitor myself in real time, and I think Josh does too. But I don't know if you do that.
I do.
But now that we've done the podcast for 2 years, I love the sound of my own voice. It's great. I've gotten so used to it that I'm just like, oh, yeah, it's just another voice. But
man, I sound good.
Yeah, I sound so good.
Actually, it's kind of interesting because when I first started voice acting and doing the podcast and all that sort of stuff, I had the same thing where I was like, oh god, cringy. I don't like listening to me. And now that I've done it so much, I'm like, yep, that's me.
What really bothers the one thing that bothers me is that I'll look back at old episodes that we've recorded, and I'll hear myself say something that's actually really funny, and I'm like, damn it, I really wish I could be that funny normally.
Yeah, but I mean, and one of the things that I will say is that everybody has struggles. Like, Indie Game Riot has now been around for just over 2 years. IRX is now around for almost 2 years. At the end of today, it'll be 2 years. And like we've had our high points and our low points. Everybody has lives that get in the way. But one of the best parts about at least the way that we operate is that through our networking with friends, we have a group of people that when I end up, I get stuck at work a lot. I work 60 to 80 hours a week as a sysadmin and virtualization engineer, and I get stuck on occasion with dealing with somebody's server, and once a literal fire in a networking closet, and being able to turn to a friend and say, "Hey, can you cover for me on the show?" If you followed the show, Tim Donnelly's been on it several times as a guest host, and I always love those episodes, and absolutely, if there was anybody that I could pick to replace me on the show, if I had to drop out for whatever reason, I would hand the proverbial torch over to Tim. But just having this group of people that surround us as a podcast and the show, fantastic, and it all came about because of the way that we do things, the way that we reach out to everybody, and there's no game dev too small to talk to. There's no game that is too bad to talk about in a positive way. And I think that's ultimately what really set us apart from a lot of other independent game journalists.
Is our angle. Our angle going into it.
Exactly. A lot of places, it's really easy to get caught up in the criticism and the angst and the shitstorm drama.
Oh, I didn't like this, I didn't like that. And that's fine if you are trying to protect consumers or
we do that too.
We do that too, but we do that through the games that we choose to.
The worst thing we do is constructive criticism. Exactly. I understand why people are out there with shows that tear things apart, because it's entertaining and it can be funny for everyone but the person you're tearing apart.
Right.
But I understand it. But the other thing is, we wanted to. The main goal was for both Indie Game Riot and IRX was to support devs, and we can't do that by just being an asshole and celebrate. Exactly. Yeah. And there's also there's enough shows out there that take the negative route. There's enough of them. There's not a whole lot.
There's more than enough of them.
There's not a whole lot that go the other way. Yeah. So it was important to us to keep that goal, and all the games, and like I said, we also protect the consumer because we curate the games very carefully. That's not to say that we don't have misses, because we've talked about games that it's especially in early access, it's always dangerous water, and we've had misses where those games ended up getting canceled, and people just lost money because.
But in terms of games that we covered that got canceled, that is a normal thing that happens, and considering that we've covered, just on the show alone, hundreds and I don't know how many.
300 games.
300 games.
Three games an episode.
At least.
At least. And we're on episode 98.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So 300 games at least.
At least.
And of those,
not to mention all the interviews at conventions and things like that.
Exactly.
Of those, 2 or 3 got canceled. Maybe 2. I don't know.
No, we've had a handful. We're sitting at around 5 or so, but even then, it's usually the ones that have been canceled have been the ones that have been canceled the right way, and it sounds like that's kind of a misnomer. Like, how do you cancel something correctly?
Right.
But it's
they didn't screw people out of money and just run with it. You know what I mean? They were they tried their best to continue.
And they were informative, and they were giving updates, and none of the games that we promote on our show, especially in early access or on Kickstarter, none of those games are games that we wouldn't also fund. I look at my Kickstarter backing, and every single one of the things that I have backed came out of Indie Game Riot. And it's one of those things that as long as we believe in the project, and we think that it's of value, it may not be the greatest game, but it's going to contribute something. And so, I back plenty of stuff on Kickstarter just because of that.
I want to take the time to, because we mentioned having all the people around us, like Tim, Jay Tholen, who hasn't been here this weekend, but he was our first interview ever on Indie Game Riot.
Very first interview.
People like that. Phil, who's been on, he was at an IRX last year, and he's listened to us for a long time now. Dean, one of the first people we met at a physical convention at MagFest. All these people and all the new people that we've met. Garrett and Jesse, all you people in the chat. Pedro has been listening for a long time. Matei was on our show. All these people.
We've got Rick and also Rick.
Rick from Underbite Studios. We met at a convention. He's a super cool guy who also supports us. I think he's actually a Patreon supporter. So that was really cool. And Matei is a Patreon supporter for a while too.
So if you buy their games indirectly, that sort of helps us a little bit.
And what I was going to say was that I wanted to thank you all for being so supportive and being around and coming on our show, and Tim's filled in for us before and all that sort of stuff. It's not only, we don't expect anything in return. We don't expect it. The point of the show is for us to give to you support. But to receive the support is just icing on the cake, and we appreciate it so much. So,
because we actually care. We're not in this, and we were never in this for the money.
I don't know.
If you're going into,
you're kind of a snake in the grass.
If you are going into a podcast thinking I'm going to make it rich,
right, you're
going to be the most disappointed person.
And it'd be a lie if I think any of us said, especially, I'll speak for myself, but. It'd be a lie if I said, making money from this and making a living wouldn't be. I don't want that. Of course, I want that. I want to be able to support. I want to be able to support my family and do this full time. But I'm not sitting here being like, why am I not making money from this right now? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's just a goal, but it's not something that I'm going to be like, well, I give up now. I'm going to be doing this for as long as I possibly can.
And because we care, we love it. It's not something that, like, at this point, it really isn't something that we could just stop. Mm-hmm. And it's not, and it's because it's not us anymore.
And a big thank you. I was going to do this like at the end of today. A big thank you to a lot of people for both Indie Game Riot and IRX. The other Rick I wanted to mention, who hasn't been able to come on because he doesn't have internet. All he has is a phone that's like 2G after a certain amount of time. But Rick has been a longtime listener, and we brought him on as a part of the team because he was so willing to make these awesome graphics. He didn't make the logo, but the theme and all the overlays and the thumbnail layouts and all that sort of stuff for both Indie Game Riot and Indie Revolution Expo. He made the award badges that we're going to give out later. He's been so incredibly supportive, and we haven't been able to give anything to him, and he doesn't even care. And I mentioned it was like, hey, man, someday I'm going to give you money. He's like, no, don't worry about it, man. And, oh, my God, like, Rick is so – I appreciate Rick so much. And if you see Rick, his name is it at Preposterone on Twitter?
Double checking
right
now,
Retronator.
Yes. At
just
Preposterone.
Subscribed.
See, man, that's what I'm talking about, Matei. You guys are awesome, man. Thank you so much. But yeah, and so tweet at Preposterone, right?
Tell him that he's awesome.
Tell him that he's awesome. He should get the notification.
Because this show would not be as awesome without him.
He should get the notification. The other people to thank too, I think, who don't really have a whole lot to do with the indie game industry, but are part of this because they support it. They support this habit. Is Jesse, Tech's girlfriend. Rev's
Yeah,
family. My wife, who right now took off for work for the entire weekend so she could be bored in locked out of this room and taking care of the kids for 3 days, and she brought me food like not that long ago. Like, you know what I mean? There's people outside of that too to thank. It's just this. I don't know if it's an overreaction to say that Indie Game Riot and every Revolution Expo has affected my life in a tremendous way positively. So
yeah, and also don't forget Matthew Dawson, who writes.
I don't know if he's doing it anymore. I don't know if he's doing it anymore.
Hey,
but he did write.
Shout out, man. We really appreciate that. For real.
And also, the person who designed this T-shirt, available in the store. This is like the main IRX logo. Of course, it's backwards to you guys, but that's the main IRX logo. That at Hot Cup, and I think the O in Hot is actually a 0 on Twitter. And his wife Bell Bunny, which is I think the L's in the Bell are 1s instead. They actually helped design the logo and some of the infographics and things like that for the first year of IRX, and of course it's the main logo, so thanks to them as well. Oh, we got 3 minutes. I don't know if anyone has any other questions.
Any questions?
Guys, ask us. Hit us with some questions on this. I mean, we've kind of gone over everything, and while we're waiting for any possible questions, what are our plans for next year? Let's talk about the future a little. What do we want to see?
Well, obviously more conventions for Indie Game Riot, like physical conventions.
Mm-hmm. Going to them.
There's we keep it pretty consistent as far as the show, but I mean, I think we're always thinking about maybe new ways to just change it up a little bit, keep it from going stale, that sort of stuff. As far as IRX goes, the winner to be announced tonight. Hopefully, we'll be able to we'll be willing to create another fantastic logo theme for next year. And
which I'm just like, that's the coolest idea ever, because like I loved the design for IRX last year.
Thank you, Tim, for
and
that.
It was absolutely great. And then Josh comes back with the idea of just like, what if we had the winner of the most revolutionary game best of show for Indie Revolution Expo design the logo for the next year, and that just means that, well, it makes it a little bit easier on us, but it also means
free work
that each year will be its own beautiful indie themed show, and it'll be unique. And I expect this. I want to do this for years. I don't know how many. I don't know how many, but I want this to go on for a while.
Garrett Polcast, he says, we're the first Hitbox show that he's ever seen. He's usually on other streaming services. How do we like it? We had a lot of discussion about which streaming service we would choose to host us.
We started Hitbox, just to point out, before YouTube streaming. Not that we would have chosen that, but that wasn't available then. So
it wasn't available then. It was kind of Twitch or nothing. And then Hitbox came out, and right around that time, Twitch got bought by a megacorp, and Amazon. They started having all sorts of issues in terms of the content that they were allowing, and whether or not we could play music, and all sorts of crap like that.
We also weren't since we show a lot of YouTube videos because of showing the trailers and stuff like that. We weren't sure if they were going to be like, oh, this is copyright infringement. So
exactly, and so we did some tests on Twitch. We did some tests on Hitbox, and because of our size, I mean, let's be honest, we're not we're not some 600,000 viewer stream. Although that would be cool. Twitch gives priority to bigger numbers, go figure. And we saw a remarkable improvement in service quality over Hitbox. At Hitbox as opposed to Twitch, and we decided, you know what, might as well. They're a small independent system, independent company, and they've got servers all over. We have good quality there, so let's go.
There was less latency. I don't know about now, but there was at the time.
It's gotten
pretty
slightly
low.
worse.
It's still pretty good.
It's gotten slightly worse, but it's still far and away better. I mean,
I think technically Hitbox, I think it's still in beta. I think, and there's been hiccups, some lack of features, but I mean, it still improves, and I think that we stand a chance to stand out on Hitbox more than we do on Twitch.
Yeah,
definitely.
Even though there's more users on Twitch,
but
if we can convert,
but that's okay. and I feel like it's also a little bit more of a it's a chiller, more friendly environment, because like on Twitch, you are expected to be a certain way. Like there is a Twitch has become sort of like the YouTube Let's Play community, where the big popular channels sort of dictate the method and form that other smaller channels will try and emulate to get more views. Whereas here it's just sort of like we're being ourselves, we're doing what we love, and Hitbox doesn't get in the way of that at all.
They just tweeted us out earlier.
Yeah, exactly.
One of the admins showed up in chat and just tweeted us out, so that was cool of them.
So he was probably like, "Who's streaming at 10 a.m. on
That's
Sunday?"
what I was thinking. Like, well, no one else is. so anyway, that is the story of Indie Game Riot and Indie Revolution Expo and how we do it. I hope you enjoyed that. You asked for it.
Yeah,
you asked for it. So,
you early birds, you.
With that said, I think, what do we have next?
Next up, we have a game showcase that you already set up, luckily, for the most part.
For the most part, so it won't take as long.
Invaders, Bad Taste, Poncho, a bunch of other awesome, great stuff. Make sure to stick around.